Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. We are live. We're just going to wait a few more minutes to give other people an opportunity to join our live this evening. Good evening, everybody. And good evening, Inala Mental Health Foundation. We have Zara online that will be representing Inala Mental Health Foundation. Zara, welcome.
Thank you so much, Nakisani. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this topic today.
Thank you. Just give me 2 more minutes as we wait for more people to join. Thank you.
Oh, I think my internet went out there for a second.
All right. You're still clear on my side. You're still clear on my side.
Thanks.
Just a few more minutes and then we'll start with our conversation. We don't want anybody left out. We want to make sure that everybody is accommodated. Good evening, Emmanuel. Welcome. Just reading the comments on Facebook. Hi, Mbezi. Welcome. Welcome online. Thank you for joining. Okay, and we are live and we are going to start our topic today. Hello, everybody, and welcome to School of Empowerment Africa. My name is Nakisani Jessica Lepadzi, and I am going to be your host on this session of Empower Hour. Today, we're going to be tackling the topic on mental health issues. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us. As you will all know that on the 10th of October has been marked as World Mental Health Day. This has been done by the World Health Organization, and this is to create awareness and encourage efforts to support those that are living with mental issues. And when we take it back to our continent, Africa, due to lack of resources and education, there is so much stigma that is attached to mental health issues. It is usually perceived as craziness. It is perceived as being under some spiritual curse. It is perceived as being weak or even misunderstood. And that is the reason we have such platforms to create awareness on mental health issues. And when we take it back home to South Africa, according to the World Health Organization, South Africa is one of the countries that has the highest suicide rates in Africa. It is actually ranked number 3. But today, on this Empower Hour session, as we're taking mental health topic, I am not here all by myself. I have Zara from Inala Mental Health Foundation, who is going to help us have this conversation today on mental health. Zara, please, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. Can you just please introduce yourself and tell us how you form part of this conversation tonight?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I just want to disclaim my internet is quite jumpy. So if I am delayed or anything, it's just the internet. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. My name is Zara. I'm the program manager at Inala Mental Health Foundation. We're based in Cape Town, in Woodstock. And I am really passionate about mental health. I work with youth and families in the Woodstock area. And I have daily conversations around mental health, bringing awareness. And a huge part of our organization is advocacy and awareness. And all those things you mentioned, the stats, what it looks like in South Africa is very much a reality in which we face on a daily basis. And yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation and to dive in. There's so much, to learn, and I'm excited to get into it.
Thank you so much, Zara. To all our Facebook viewers, you are more than welcome. You may comment. We are here to answer all the questions that you may have regarding mental issues. Would really appreciate it if you guys do engage with us, because that is what we are here for tonight. So first and foremost, Zara, what I would ask from you is that what would you describe mental health as?
That's a really good question. That's a huge question, I think. And it's something that I even struggle to define myself. But what I understand it to be is something really intertwined with overall human health. It's the experience of physical health, and it's the relationship we have with ourselves, the relationship we have with our family and friends, the relationships we have with the natural world, our communities, and the places that we encounter on a daily basis. I think mental health cannot be separated from all of those relationships with the world and who we are in it. And I know the label is mental health, but it's really I believe it can't be separated between just overall well-being, the sense of wellness that is involved in being able to operate in our daily lives with a sense of health and vitality and contribution to society. I think that's all linked and is a holistic experience of health.
Thank you for that description, Zara. I think one of the questions that I would ask following up to that, like you said, there's no one size fits all description of what mental health can be. But talking about mental health, there's so many things that contribute to mental health illnesses and issues. What would you say from your experience are the major factors that contribute to mental health illness? Zara had indicated earlier that she might be having issues with her connectivity. We'll just wait for her to get back online again. She seems to be disconnected. Oh, she's back. Hi, Zara.
I'm so sorry. This internet is really bad. I'm so sorry.
These things do happen. Did you get my previous question?
Sorry, no, I didn't catch that last part.
No, it's okay. So what I asked was, like, as you had said before, there is no one size fits all description to mental health. But from your experience, what has been the major contributing factors to mental health illness? Based on the work that you do and based on your experience, what are the major issues that contribute to mental health illness?
Yeah, I think in my work and what I've seen happening, I've studied social work and majored in psychology. And the work that we do at Inala is very much focused on the theory of ACEs, which is the understanding of adverse childhood experiences. And that's the baseline of many low mental health or poor experiences of mental health, is this experience of having real difficult childhood experiences and what we would call traumas happening in early childhood that impact much later into what we see into adolescence, into adulthood, and even into later life. It's pervasive, and if not, it creates severe mental disorders and experiences of depression, anxiety, and yeah, there's obviously a lot of contextual issues to that as well. Obviously, there's genetics and hereditary factors, but what I see that's pervasive throughout is the experience of childhood trauma, whether that's abuse, physical, emotional, sexual abuse, if that's neglect, abandonment, if that's having a parent who's mentally ill and growing up in a home with a mentally ill parent. Even poverty is a form of trauma, just growing up with not enough, going to bed hungry. And those are all real experiences of many individuals across the globe, and even we may know people and maybe ourselves who've experienced that. And having those experiences in early childhood has been predetermined to have really, really impacting our mental health later into life, and showing up and manifesting as depression, anxiety. And really what's important about that is understanding that there's really nothing wrong with you, and that trauma and the way our brains have been wired, and the depression and anxiety, suicidal ideation that we might experience, is all ways our brains and our bodies are trying to survive through that trauma. And especially if it's something that's been repressed, and there's so much shame and stigma, which you were talking about earlier, around this conversation, creates so much more difficulty in healing. So this is why this conversation is so important, and why it's such a passion of mine to talk about. Because often the first step and the biggest step is sharing and looking within.
Wow, thank you so much. You have mentioned childhood trauma as being usually the basis for mental health issues. My next question on that would be, because we all have different backgrounds where we have grown up in, and different childhood experiences, when would one be able to say that I'm unwell and I need help? How do you know that this is just normal behavior, or this is a time to seek for help, given the way I've been brought up? Because sometimes you might be in denial, but what are the things that you look out for to say it's time you raise your hand and say you need help, or it's time you go out and seek help? So that is my next question for you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's really an individual case-by-case situation. I think often one person's experience of having a low day or low kind of poor mental health is somebody else's not so much. But I would say the overall indicators is if you're generally feeling you're not able to get up in the morning, and there's this feeling of dread throughout the day, this worry about, this numbness to life. Maybe there's an experience of not being able to hold relationships, hold down a job, feeling really depleted, a feeling of fatigue, and just not really willing to engage with life. Often those are really big indicators that your mental health is struggling. And that also relates to physical symptoms. So if you're feeling you're eating too much or eating too little, there's experience of sleeping too much or sleeping too little. Those are all really big indicators. Our appetite and our sleep often are the first things to tell us, are like warning flags that are saying, actually, maybe there's something deeper here that we're needing to look at, that our bodies are trying to give us signs and cues to say, hey, let's open this door and see why is it hard for us to essentially have a healthier day or a healthier morning.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I do get that. So the next question that I would ask is that, is there a way to prevent mental health problems?
That's a really good question as well. I think what's so interesting about that question is that I feel sometimes in that question, there's this urgency to avoid this pain of what it is to be essentially human. I think I like to flip the script in that question and say, is there a way to prevent pain? Is there a way to prevent just being human? I think in the world that we live in, and currently what we've gone through the pandemic, I mean, all of us have experienced some traumas of either that's grief, loss, a pain of experiencing, of not just being able to move outside the house, this fear that's always involved within engaging in the world. And I think coming post-COVID and into kind of this realm of life where we're trying to get used to the new normals is essentially, I would say, to answer and to not answer your question, is that being a human, we cannot prevent pain. Our mental health is in a constant state of flux and dynamic interaction with the world. It changes hour by hour, changes day by day, month by month, year by year. And so I would say prevention of that is to prevent being human. I think it's human to have a fluctuation of our state of health. And it's about how do we create a a state where we can meet ourselves and know what we need and kind of create a toolbox to know, okay, today I know I'm eating my feelings, I'm definitely not sleeping, I'm having insomnia, I'm watching too much series and Netflix when I get home and not actually wanting to feel my feelings. And then knowing your toolbox, knowing, oh, actually I have a pen and a journal, like just write down all my feels and call a friend or go for a walk in the forest, whatever that looks like for you. I think it's about learning our toolkit is a way to relate to our mental health.
Thank you for that. As you said, there is no way that we can avoid pain in life. So given what you have said, how would you say somebody struggling with mental health, what are the tools or the tips that you would give them to deal with the issue at hand, to deal with mental illness, especially, I mean, in Africa, we still have a high number of remote areas, rural areas, where things such as therapy are not easily accessible or affordable, or they don't even have the knowledge on how to deal with mental health issues. What are the tips that you would give that seems to have been effective in dealing with mental issues for people that cannot afford to go maybe for therapy or don't have access but want to somehow deal with it at home?
I think to answer that question would be to say, again, to preface that with that mental health exists on a spectrum. There's severe mental health and there's, the mental health that we experience that we're feeling in a really good space of health. And again, that's really, again, a contextual issue. So if you're living in an area where you don't have access, that creates so many challenges and barriers. And that's what our organization at Inala, that's our reason for existing, is to try to make mental health accessible. We operate in, I've just dealt with a recent case where it was a family, a refugee family with one of their family members struggling severely with mental health, had dissociative depression and anxiety tendencies. And we had to engage with the family. I think that's the real first port of call when looking at these issues. They came from a family and a culture where there's no word for depression, there's no word for mental health. There was no conversation about that. And so sitting down with the family, with the language barriers, the cultural barriers, information barriers, was a huge challenge, but a realistic challenge in which we're facing in South Africa. And so how we overcame that was through education and through compassionate understanding of perspectives. And for them, the support looked like very much religious beliefs, and guiding their beliefs through understanding that that's what guides them, but then also having the perspective of psychiatric help. And we, as an organization, organized that. And now she's on medication and she's doing really, really well. And the family's more informed and feels more empowered by the information. But it's really about getting to the grassroots and understanding that, yes, there is no actual vocabulary in these communities. And so it's building that from the ground up. And it's really a case-by-case conversation, I think.
Yes, yeah. I guess every situation differs from the next situation. And my next question would be, in terms of dealing with mental health, right? You spoke about families coming together to support the one patient that you had been dealing with. What I've found in the African culture, and just recently there was a trend on Twitter and Facebook and TikTok, whereby people that have gone for therapy spoke about being victimized when they get home. Like, for example, a parent will be invited to one of the therapy sessions, and upon arriving from home, it will be things like, no, don't make her wash the dishes, or else she'll go tell the psychologist that we are causing her anxiety. Oh no, don't wake her up, because now she's going to say we're not creating a safe space for her, and it becomes very hard to open up because you from this therapy session and then you come home and you're still being victimized. There's the subtle messages that they say. Now everybody has to tiptoe around you. How do you deal with situations like that? And what would you encourage to be done to take away that stigma and to have the conversation, especially in our African homes where, like you said, it's words such as depression, mental health, and anxiety are not spoken more of. You understand? It's usually related to she's being rebellious, she's just being lazy. I mean, when you're not able to wake up, you're just being lazy, when in fact you are actually struggling with some mental health issues. How have you dealt with that in the past?
Sure. I wish I had the answers for this, but what I do experience in my work is we work very closely within the family system. So we understand we can't really affect change through just the kid or any individual we're working with. We have to work with the family, the schooling system, and we work very closely with that. And so often what I've experienced, and recently we've been working with a lot of families who are actually refugees and families who actually don't even speak English. And you can imagine the challenges even with just language and culture. But even in our communities in South Africa, what we've actually experienced is there's a stigma around it because there is this fear for a lot of the parents in that generation that have been growing up in apartheid. There was so much displacement and so much trauma, generational trauma that was from the grandmother to the great-grandmother, so many years back. And there was this messaging that was passed through those generations that you just got to suck it up and you just have to move, and that you just got to put food on the table and you got to make sure there's a roof over our head. And that was survival. And that was the best way to get through this very traumatic time. And now we're in a generation, this younger generation, where we're looking at new challenges of this new South Africa, where we're still very much facing so much poverty and inequality, but there's this willingness to dig deeper, and that excites me. I love working with young girls. They ask such inquisitive questions and so emotionally intelligent, and they challenge, but they say, we would never have these conversations at home. I would never be able to say to my dad, that I struggle with this. He would, want to get an exorcism if I ever shared any of this. And so those are realities. But I think if we're creating more spaces for parents to share, what I see is that kind of facade of it being quite punitive and there's something wrong with you, just quickly drops when we ask questions of what was it like for you to grow up as a kid, and when you were, struggling with poverty and abuse and the trauma of just existing in the skin that you're in. Then we can see the real impact of what trauma looks like. And then there's so much empathy and care and warmth and this love that's just mistranslated somehow into this feeling of, you got to survive. And so it's complex. It's very complex, but I'm very excited about this new wave of young girls and boys to look deeper and even to challenge each other and to challenge me. I learned so much.
Thank you. Now, still talking on the topic of family and mental health, there is this belief that one shouldn't have mental issues when they are considered blessed. Like, for example, you have a full fridge, you have clothes, you have a roof above you, and everything like that. How do you then differentiate to say you can have all those things? You can have a good career going on for you, you can have a very supportive family there for you, you can have all those materialistic things that somebody might look at you and say, but you have it all. Why are you still suffering from mental health issues? Why are you still not motivated to go on about your day? Why are you not focusing on your dreams? What is the reason? What has been your experience with that regard? Because sometimes people are like, no, it's because you're not celebrating the little wins. It's because you're not being grateful. And that's the reason why you're having all those mental issues. And you're like, but because you hear of people that had, when you look at them from the outside, they seem to have it all. And at the end of the day, you hear that like they have committed suicide, or you understand what I'm saying? What is the bridge there? What is the relation there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think especially now in the age of social media and online presence, there's this very curated sense of what we put out into the world. And also we like to see what we like to see. And we often think if we get to the next goalpost, if we get the next thing, if we have this amount of money in our bank account and this kind of looking house and this kind of looking partner, then somehow all the problems and pain is going to disappear. But that's when we see that those levels of kind of reaching outside of ourselves, we see the more and more the pain gets gets bigger because you don't find that sense of peace. You don't finally get to that point, oh, great, I have this beautiful apartment, this beautiful house, and this beautiful car, but I still feel empty inside. It doesn't take away those feelings. For some people, obviously not for everybody who has beautiful things. But I think that's a good question in understanding that the experiences, again, that we have in childhood when we didn't have enough, and we're going to make our mission in life to make sure we always have enough, doesn't go away when you do have those things. That fear, that core wounding that we grew up with, that we are not lovable, that we're not enough, and that we'll never be as good as the next person, often leaves us in the state of high functioning. I see people, all my private clients are incredibly high functioning individuals who are incredibly intelligent and make good salaries, and you would never think they were struggling with the things they are. But the reality is that we're all human. And I think often as humans, we want the quickest fix. We want the thing that's going to tell us, we're going to have all our shit together and then we're going to be okay. But the reality is that often that leads to deeper levels of depression, where we mask ourselves and we put onto the world that we're okay and we're perfect and our lives are amazing. But deep inside, the divide between the wholeness of the self, which is the well-being, the mental health, starts to divide and break apart. And that creates real disorders of dissociation and depression and anxiety, all very high functioning. There's high functioning alcoholics in the world. There's high functioning anxiety and depression, where they can get up and they can brush their teeth and get out the door. But inside, there's this numbness, this disconnection. There's this complete lack and low vitality for life. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but that's my take on it.
No, it does. It does really answer the question. I have a question here from Betsy. He said that I heard you mention that we try to escape from our problem, though trying to achieve different goals. So how does one heal from trauma and pain? Thank you for that question, Betsy.
Yeah, thanks for that question. That's a journey I'm on, and a journey that all the people I work with are on in my team as well. It's an everyday decision to choose and to first identify what we're feeling. I think that's the biggest point, is to think, what am I actually feeling like today? In every team meeting on a Monday, and at the end of the week, we do a team check-in and a check-out. So we check in the Monday morning meeting with identifying how we're feeling and having an honest conversation at our work meeting of, this was my weekend and this is how I'm feeling. I'm bringing this energy into the room. And often that's the first time I actually get to really take stock of, actually, I didn't realize how I was feeling the whole entire weekend or the whole entire week. It kind of just, we're not really taught that in schools, in our families, to identify, number one, identify our emotions. And to heal is to start to, get curious about how we're feeling, and the next question is, what do we need? And often that can be very basic, like a glass of water. And the next step is taking a nap, or calling a friend, or going for a walk. And you'll see the more you practice that, the more intuitive and natural it becomes. Initially, it feels very weird to see to our needs first and to actually think about how we are feeling before someone else. But this is, I think, the beginning of the healing. And then, seeking help, seeking support through therapy has been number one game changer in my life. Good luck to that person. I think it's amazing.
Thank you. You've also spoke about having debriefing during your work sessions. And I mean, it brings us to the topic because, back then, not a lot of people were in the workforce. It was just only male people in the workforce. But now you enter into the workforce, there's everybody, young and old, and organizations have a culture. What would you say organizations can do to best bring about mental health awareness in the workplace and to also accommodate it? Because you find that the minute you come out to say, listen, I am not feeling well, I'm on antidepressants, then you find yourself being victimized or stigmatized, and then you end up missing opportunities in the workplace because now you're not trusted with projects because people see you as this person who cannot maybe handle work. Like you said, you have high functional people. And the question would be, what can be put in place in the workplace to create mental health awareness and create a safe space, because I believe that if one is in a safe space, they're able to produce their best as much as they feel safe, So what would be the methods or the tools that needs to be adhered to in the workplace to make it a safe place and also to create mental health awareness?
That's a good question. Inala does a lot of work with corporates and other organizations to start to have that conversation. And it's really an organization by organization example of what is the culture? What is the work culture? Is there a feeling of, if you're feeling sick, don't even think about calling in sick and just get through the work while you're sneezing and throwing up? Or is there a feeling of allowance to be human? And often what we find is that there isn't, and it's all about the needs of the organization and not those who work in it. And that's a reality we face globally. But our organization, we do have one arm of our organization is really set on providing that support to big corporates, to other organizations to start that conversation. And I've been very lucky. I used to work at another organization, even with mental health as well. And it was truly actually quite scary how that conversation was never around the colleagues and in a work environment, because it just felt so unsafe. There was no way I was going to share that I was having a crap day and I just want to cry and go home. We just had to suck it up. And it didn't last very long there, and I landed up finding Inala Mental Health Foundation. And we were really, and we do it very differently, and that doesn't, go past me easily. But I do think it's a new conversation, and I think post-COVID, I think a lot of organizations are a lot more open to having these conversations with organizations like us to figure out how do we support our employees without burnout every 2 months and this feeling of despondency around work when it takes up most of our lives. So yeah, that's an ongoing conversation.
Thank you. So talking about creating a safe space for anyone, what would you say are the things that one should look out for in your parents, siblings, friends, any symptoms of mental health issues? Because many times you come to realize I didn't even notice, because sometimes the loudest people, the people that are laughing, the one who's very jolly around everyone seems to be good, but when they actually go home or when they're behind closed doors, you find that those are the people that are really, really, really struggling. What are the things that one needs to look out for in terms of mental illness with those around you?
Yeah, that's important. I think I can give you an example. I would just work with, you spoke about somebody who's really loud and you'd never think they're struggling. At a school that we work with, one of the children was attempted suicide in the bathroom, just a 12-year-old child. And he was the biggest, brightest, most boldest energy in the classroom. But often, yeah, like you said, there's these signs that we don't often see. But often what's most obvious, especially if we're spending a lot of time with someone, we see changes in general engagement. Often when asking questions, there's a feeling of despondency and negative view on the world or the outcome of something. Often they start to not really message much back or ghost you. There's this disconnect from the usual behavior of what somebody, you notice your friend who used to always be up for a walk or a coffee just doesn't respond to any of your plans. Often those are a little bit of a red flag. But again, your loved ones best. And often what I've experienced in my own life is having a space where there isn't judgment and this kind of push for them to be different. It's about just sitting next to them. I've had the most powerful moments, not only in my professional life, but in my own personal life. We've just sat across from my friend or client and just said, I hear you and I see you and I'm here for you, whatever you need. And sometimes that's just sitting in silence and holding their hand or letting them cry. And often we don't give enough space and time for this in the busy lives that we have. So it's often just slowing down and showing love. That's the most powerful thing we could do.
Thank you. I guess we all need that support, to have that support system. It's very important. And I think my next question would be, when how do you determine when one should start taking medication towards mental health? Because there's therapy and there's people that actually take medication. How do you go about determining that?
So I'm not a psychiatrist. So psychiatrists diagnose and prescribe. As a psychologist and social worker, I just provide a safe space, a holding space for whatever experiences are coming through. Talk therapy is not for everybody. I think there's a new wave and a really important wave of what we would call embodiment work, which is essentially using clay, dance, singing, drawing, art, breath work. There's a lot of different forms of embodiment work that help people. And I think what I've seen really, really impactful is the hand-in-hand combination of medication, if that's necessary, if prescribed by a psychiatrist, and the combination of talk and embodiment work, which is so powerful because it again encompasses that whole, which we're talking about, the definition of mental health, which is not just one thing. It doesn't just sit in the brain, it sits in the body. I've experienced sessions with clients who've experienced severe sexual assault, and often they don't even describe. I can tell that they often have these experiences before they've even shared it, just in the way that their body and they move with their body. It's often incredibly, either on a spectrum of incredibly exposed body that they feel very uncontained in, and they often have very low boundaries and aren't really affirmed in their boundaries and can't say no when people do things that feel it's encroaching on them, or they're incredibly closed off and they have many layers on, and often the trauma sits so much in our bodies and in such an unconscious way. And so I think in combination with medication and whatever form of embodiment work is vital. I don't think there's just one fix-all experience.
Oh, okay. That's interesting to know about the different methods that can be used to help, cope with mental health issues. The next question would be talking about being a support system. What are the best ways as one to use to support somebody that is experiencing mental health issues? How can you best support if you're on the other side?
Yeah, I think, again, depending on your relationship with the person is to first speak to it, to come at it with a lot of love, and to normalize it. Often we think, this is something that only the person around the corner who's talking to themselves experiences, and it's not. It's a human experience to have periods of really low mental health, and I've experienced it. Every other person I've ever engaged with, if they're really honest with themselves, do share that as well. And so if we're coming at it with love and it's a person that you care about, I think that's the best place to come at it from. Just again, sitting across from them and saying, there's a love here and that support is here, and it's something that is accessible. I think that's the biggest thing that we can do, is to listen and to come with a lot of love and to normalize that experience for someone.
Well, thank you. From your experience, do you think that there is enough being done by our government, enough being done by our private sector, NGOs, the education system, to bridge the gap of access to mental health support in rural areas in Africa or South Africa? And what do you think should be done about that?
Yeah, I mean, clear answer is no, not even close. I think with the stats, you can literally just type mental health South Africa in Google and you'll see all the information you would ever need to make a decision, of the answer being no. I don't think it's even enough within the city and well-resourced communities even. I think it's a hard question to know what to do about that. I think it's starting conversations like this, to have organizations that we work with too, that reach out to us and say, how do we get access to mental health? How do we reach communities that are in need? And that's starting within your own community. And so that's what we've done here. I grew up in the area that I work in, and there's so many familiar faces I see every day, and the work feels really aligned. I think if we start to just try to take big chunks, it gets really scary. But I think if we start with our neighbors, and we start with our friends, and we start with ourselves, there's real impact and change that can be made. But yeah, I think on a global and more municipal level, a lot more funding needs to be put towards mental health. I think it's the basis of our society, and it's scary to think how we haven't put much emphasis on that post-apartheid.
True. I guess there's a lot of healing that needs to be done in our communities. And I think it's something that should also be included in the school curriculums, options available in schools as well. Because like you said, the basis of most of mental health issues are from childhood traumas. So it would help if we would have such things in schools. And talking about having such things in schools, I mean, now social media has become wildly accessible to children. I mean, children even have cell phones, because I remember in my time when I went to school, I was not even allowed to bring a cell phone to class or school, or it would get taken away, confiscated. Get it towards the end of the year. But now with social media, you see, I mean, you go on TikTok, you see during break time, children are accessing social media in school uniform, and so forth. My question would be, do you think the rise and the use of social media has somehow has an impact on mental health?
Yeah, I think that's definite yes. I mean, we work with kids and young girls and boys, and we see the impact that has on this idea, like we were speaking earlier, this how we curate ourselves. Not only even in person, we present an idea of who we are, but on social media, we take it to another level where we've got editing and effects we can make to make ourselves look a certain way to the world. And people, and especially children, take that for face value. And so a lot of young girls, especially young girls of color, struggle deeply with self-esteem. And we notice that affecting all areas of their life, their ability to put up their hand in a classroom because they're scared of the way they're going to look or sound, the fear of just taking up space because they just feel incredibly comparative to the person next to them. And yeah, social media has real scary impacts, but there's also some really cool stuff happening there as well. I mean, just to see, it really just depends on what you follow and what you engage with. But there's some amazing information that I've never had access to before that I've explored on social media that has helped me very much. And so I think it's two sides of the same coin, but yeah, there's some scary stuff out there for young girls and boys.
True. How can parents better protect their children from the impacts of social media? Because I could be, as a parent, providing a safe home and doing my best, but outside, like the access of social media could also be having an impact on my child at home. As a parent, how can I better protect my child from those effects of social media?
I think it's important to have conversations with your child, depending on what age they are and what's acceptable, what kind of the rules in your home are. But yeah, at Inala, when the kids come in, the first thing we do before we allow them to obviously eat, because we don't know when last they ate, is we say your phone, and we take their phone, we put it in a box, and it's a space where we're allowed to kind of just be kind of unplugged. And so if that can be a ritual in a home, I'm sure there will be an openness and a willingness for a child to share what they've seen or what they're scared of or what they want to be part of. And there can be a negotiation and an open exchange about it. Because I think if we become very punitive and all or nothing and black and white about it, it creates more rebellion than what I've seen than actually an openness. But yeah, it's a new kind of thing, and it keeps changing. It's something that's quite big that keeps changing. So as a parent, I'm not a parent myself, so I give a lot of love to the parents out there who have to kind of navigate that. That's a new thing to deal with.
It is. It's quite a new thing to deal with, because if you go to a restaurant and you are having dinner, everybody's like on their phones. There's no time for conversations anymore, and it's taking away from the relationship that, that how back then you would sit all on the table and just gather and have those conversations. So now you find yourself sitting, your child is sitting in the other room, they're on their phone the whole time. It seems like that is more entertaining than sitting and just having that conversation. So with, I mean, also the alarming numbers of suicides in South Africa, I would ask, what do you do when the support that you're offering does not work? How do you deal with that? I bring my child, or I myself go for therapy, but that support is still not working out for me. I'm not getting better. How do you usually deal with situations like that? I'm coming every day. I'm showing up for my appointments, but there seems to be no improvement whatsoever. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, again, I think what's important is to realize that talk therapy doesn't work for everybody. I've done a lot of exploration within yoga and within spaces, there's something called trauma release therapy with the body that helps you. You don't even talk about your trauma, you just release it through your body. And I think that's a huge part of the conversation that is around often when we experience kind of roadblocks in healing, or what we perceive roadblocks in healing, I think is part of the healing journey. Often we want to fast track our healing and have this, one right pill I can take and this one right conversation I can have that can make it all go away. But unfortunately, again, coming back to the beginning of our conversation, the experience of pain and heartbreak and loss and grief is the natural part of being a human. It's a natural part of the experience. And so if we're struggling with thoughts of suicide or suicidal ideation or self-harm, and there's so many forms of that as well. I mean, there's forms of self-harm we do to ourselves every day when we choose to prioritize somebody else's needs over ours, where we choose to, we see an urge of hunger and we repress that, or we see, we realize we spent 4 hours on TikTok and haven't gotten to the needs that we need to get through to meet that deadline. Those are all forms of self-harm. And so when we start to look at the bigger spectrum of how we can meet ourselves, when we go to talk therapy, and often, unfortunately, there aren't these therapists that we can, the first, one we type in Google is going to work for us. And that is actually a journey, and it's tough because, doing the biggest step is seeking help. And then often we don't meet the person that's right match for us. And it actually is quite a journey, like choosing a partner for life. You don't always get it right the first time. But yeah, it's something that it is a conversation of all the other support structures, your religion, your friendships, your daily routines. How do you connect to your breath? Do you even notice how you're breathing during the day? How do you connect with conflict? Do you avoid? Do you oppress? Do you rage? These are all indicators of where we can be at in our mental state and how we can start to bring awareness. And often awareness is the first part in shifting anything that feels quite stuck. It's just bringing awareness.
Great, thank you. Talking about awareness, I've got a question online from Mbezi. He says, could overthinking lead to mental illness?
Yeah, I think overthinking is, again, a human part of humanness. I think it can get to the point of rumination, which is a symptom of generalized anxiety, where we cannot stop thinking about this thing and becomes quite intrusive to our day. We can't really get through. We can't really focus on a conversation or a question that was asked because we're so caught up in our own thoughts and in our head. And again, I would say the way that it's worked for me when I start to overthink is often getting into my body and releasing whatever needs to be released. I think a lot can shift from just a simple 10-minute yoga video or 10-minute walk or 10-minute stretch to get out of our brains for a moment. I think we forget about that and away from our screens and into breathing and sweating a bit. But overthinking, it's really difficult. And I'm sorry that you're currently, or maybe not currently, but have experienced that. It's hard. I empathize.
Thank you for that. I can imagine. So talking about, you spoke earlier on, you spoke about the different mechanisms that one can use to deal with mental health. How would then one know? Like, for example, you spoke about yoga, like you said, therapy doesn't work for everybody. How then do you know which mechanism would be most effective for you, and where can such information be accessed on the different mechanisms that one can use to deal with mental health?
That's really a thing of just trying. You just got to put yourself out there a little bit and try. I know it's scary to join a class or to do something big, but there's YouTube and there's Google, and there's actually, when you start to dig, there's actually quite a few alternative ways, and that are really up and coming, with even in the South African context. There's some incredible stuff online and on Instagram that I follow, and that Inala Mental Health also follows, that are really holistic, and that could really work. I also recommend Breathwork for Africa. They do some amazing online courses and classes and free online classes to start to connect your breath, which is really powerful. It sounds really strange, but we don't think about our breath often, and it's our life force. And I think there's a lot out there if we start to look. But I would suggest, starting to open our phones and connect to the internet and explore and just try, even though it can be a bit scary.
I think the key word here is trying until you get it right. I have a question from Emmanuel who asks, does OCD have any bearing on one's mental health in your experience? OCD.
What does he mean by that question? What does he mean by any bearing?
I think what he means to say is that does one being OCD have an impact on your mental health based on your experience? Yes.
Yeah, so OCD in itself is a mental health disorder, and that can come in the forms of intrusive thoughts, in repetitive behaviors, and compulsive behaviors, to reduce a sense of anxiety or a core fear or belief for something. And that it's not just hand washing, it could be so many different things, and it can be very debilitating, and often is needed for medication and CBT therapies with a therapist. And so, it's a really big mental health. It's quite an umbrella of OCD is quite an umbrella. There's so many things underneath it. But it's quite a severe mental health disorder.
Oh, thank you for that. I guess, like you said earlier on when we started the conversation, there's no one final description on mental health. There's many branches under mental health when we speak about mental health. As I was doing my research on mental health, I came across a section, and it's called being sectioned. What does that mean, and what does that entail?
Yeah, I think if I caught you right, you said being sectioned. Yeah. So often I think it sounds like quite a scary word, but I think it's a method that some practitioners use when they see a client or a patient that's severely unwell, and cannot make decisions for themselves based on criteria and a diagnostic list, which is licensed therapist does. And if they sense this individual cannot make decisions on behalf of themselves because they either have a learning disability or a disability that prevents them to make executive decisions, they will make decisions for them, which is to send them to a psychiatric facility and be on more higher alert and more higher care for mental health disorders. It happens very rarely, and often, so many factors are involved and so many processes are involved in that for that to happen. That's, I think, the definition for that, if I get that right.
Yes, you did get that right. Is there enough facilities in South Africa for such situations?
Sorry, I didn't catch that question.
I was asking, is there enough facilities in South Africa for such situations?
There really isn't. I mean, if you look at, if you just type in life, Isidameni, I think I got that right. There was a case where it was really severe mental health. A lot of people died because of the poor care that was given to those individuals in need. And I think that's at its core, what we're talking about is just the lack of funding, the lack of supervision, the lack of follow through with care. And the stigma that we can just treat people with mental health poorly because they somehow are lesser grade individuals in society. And that's a very severe case, but unfortunately is really common, even within our communities. If we think of, how we look at the person who's talking to themselves on the road, and we think lesser than. But again, mental health is an experience of human health, and it, again, is on a spectrum. And at any point, if we don't look after ourselves, we could be in a state which is really severe. And I think we'd all want to be cared for in a way that's humane and respects our rights. But I agree, there's no real quality of care and regulation in that care, unfortunately.
It's very sad, but it just shows that we have a lot of work that we still need to do as a nation. Like you said, it starts with you being where you are, start making the difference where you are, while at the same time taking care of yourself. We have 5 minutes left before we end this conversation. Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming through. Is there anything that you want people to know about mental health that we haven't touched on today as Inala Mental Health Foundation? Where can we find you? How can we get hold of you? Who are you? What do you want to do? What is the message that you want South Africa to know about mental health as we are in this month of mental health awareness?
Thanks for asking. So, you can find Inala Mental Health. We've just relaunched our new website. And so all our information is out there. And we run a really incredible programs that focus on an exchange of responsibility of taking care of your mental health. And so we operate under the understanding that you have the knowledge, the power, but we can facilitate a sense of well-being. And so it's an exchange and it's more sustainable. So we work a lot in nature with girls and boys and women and men, and we run many programs. And we're currently running a program called Move for Mental Health Awareness Month in this month. And we've just had one weekend of it where so many individuals have sent through, it's kind of a community-based initiative where so many individuals hashtag Move for Mental Health and at Inala and share their whatever movement they've done that day and donate towards our programs, whether that's our Yabantu Girls program, Pilisa Boys, or Sizwe parenting programs. We have so many programs that are needing funding to continue the amazing work that we do. The message that underlies our work and underlies my own personal life is that we belong and that there's nothing wrong with us. Even with the most severe cases I've seen, we often want to distance ourselves from them. But if we can accept the humanness of the experience of how painful it is sometimes to be human, we can accept the beauty and the joy and the resilience and the profound, powerful adaptability to all the circumstances that life has thrown us. I've seen some incredible, beautiful things in my career so far. I've seen girls who have gone through incredible abuse, sexual, physical, emotional, and psychological abuse, and have come out through becoming teachers of their own and wanting to get back in becoming a social worker. And it makes me emotional and it makes me really, really proud to be human. I think we can often get quite bogged down in the things that we see in the news on a daily basis and on the radio, which I don't read anymore. I focus on the community that we have. And even in that, in our own families and our own homes, we're dealing with real stuff, pain and loss and trauma and anger. And all of those things I feel like we're entitled to feel. But it's what we do with it and how we share that with others and how we connect to others is what I think it is to be a human, when we connect to our pain. And so, I really hope that you can take that home and realize that you do belong. Whether that's, if that doesn't feel in your family, if that feels in nature or in a cup of coffee or in a chat with a friend, I really encourage that we find spaces we feel safe or to create those spaces. So yeah, please reach out to us and follow us and support our programs if you can. It's real powerful stuff. And thank you for listening and joining in. I mean, you guys are kind of the reason why I continue talking. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Zara. I just have 2 last questions. You spoke about Inala Mental Health Foundation helps women, children, and men. And one of the things that we have realized was that men don't usually come out to talk, because most men are brought up, men are not allowed to cry, you're not allowed to show your weaknesses. And when you look at the stats, the suicide rates, men suicides are high because they don't have the support, they're scared to come out. How can you encourage more men to come out or support them to come out to say, listen, I'm not okay. And even with me not being okay, I still belong.
Yeah, I mean the rates for men in South Africa is really high around suicide, which is really sad. But what we've noticed in our parenting programs, mostly single moms are involved. But this year we've seen a shift, and men are involved, and single dads, and that's been really empowering. And what's really important, I think, around men is, again, the access to the body. So for the boys program, it's very different to the girls program. The girls program, we sit, we do our nails, we chat, we eat, we have snacks. But for the boys, we look at, okay, where's the soccer ball? Where's the field? Let's kick a ball. Let's talk about what our day looked like. And it's a different conversation. And so for boys and men, it's about creating those spaces that feel comfortable, but also feel like it's pushing us towards realizing that we're human. And often men struggle to just even show humanness, and we mistake that for weakness. But I've seen the men that have shown up. I've seen grown men cry, and it's been the most powerful and the most brave thing I've ever seen in my life. And it gives the permission slip to the guy next to you to also go there and share. And I think that's really important, that they start talking while you're kicking a ball or watching soccer or whatever it is to start just talking. Because I think we're so afraid, but you will be so surprised how the guy next to you that you've known your whole life and you've never asked how he feels the exact same. So yeah, I would definitely encourage men to start that.
I guess it goes back to openness and just being there one step at a time. We'll eventually get it right. My last question to you is that, we're living life on a daily basis. What are the things that you would give, or tips that you would give, that would help one protect their mental health and be aware of it? What are the tips that one can practice every day to guard their mental health?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's like first thing in the morning, what are you doing? Are you opening your phone, scrolling on social and absorbing trillions of information? Or are you taking a moment to breathe, open the window, breathe in fresh air, see what the weather's like, and slowly move through your day? Or is it feeling really pressured and rushed and full of anxiety? I think if we start even just a simple thing of how we start our day, if that can shift, and that we can scroll on social media afterwards, but that we just get to, because that's so important, the way we wake up and the way we go to bed can really determine so much of our state of being. And I think drives home the whole conversation, which is that often we see mental health as this huge, big, scary thing, but it surprises so many people how just really the smallest thing can shift it. And we forget that because we think this feeling is so big and so awful and so horrific. How could I ever move through this? But the smallest thing can shift it, the really smallest thing. And for me, that's putting my phone in do not disturb after 8 o'clock at night and before 8 o'clock in the morning. And anything else, if it's somebody's dying, I'm sure I'll find out just after it, kind of thing. It's just setting those boundaries and parameters, and maybe that looks different for you. And that's what's worked, and start to make those small shifts, because maybe what you'll notice is that it actually makes the biggest difference. And spending some time away from my phone and into walking and chatting with a friend and seeing how she's doing or they're doing is a real huge shift in my state of being. I feel so much more connected and grounded.
Thank you so much, Zara. I guess it's the small little things that end up making up the bigger picture when we start being mindful of the little things that we might take for granted. You actually realize that it's those small little pieces that actually contribute to the bigger picture. Zara, thank you so much for and for having this conversation with us. We really appreciate it. And I pray and hope that as you go about, you continue to make a difference and your voice is out there and you continue to get more support and change people's lives. Ultimately, at the end of the day, is to save one life at a time. Thank you for joining us, and we really appreciate your time and have a wonderful week further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nakisani. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you to all who listened. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you to everybody that came through and all the questions that came through. I hope this conversation has really made a difference and you have something that you have taken out of today's conversation. We'll see you next time in the next Empower Hour, which will be next week, Tuesday. Thank you and have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye.